Sophia Malik was known as one of the most successful CEOs in the city. At just 38 years old, she owned a billion-dollar technology company, appeared on magazine covers, and inspired thousands of women around the world. People admired her confidence, intelligence, and leadership. Every day, she attended important meetings, signed million-dollar deals, and gave speeches in front of large audiences. To the world, Sophia looked like she had everything. But behind the glass walls of her luxurious office and the flashing cameras, there was a silence in her life that no success could fill. That silence came from her 8-year-old daughter, Emma. Emma had stopped speaking 3 years earlier after losing her father in a tragic car accident. The once cheerful little girl who used to laugh, sing, and tell endless stories suddenly became quiet. Doctors called it traumatic selective mutism. She understood everything around her, but she refused to speak. No therapy, no medicine, and no expensive treatment had been able to bring her voice back. Sophia tried everything in the beginning. She canceled meetings, hired specialists, and spent nights sitting beside Emma's bed, hoping to hear even a single word. But as time passed, the pressure of running a company slowly pulled her away. Her days became busier, her nights became shorter, and the distance between mother and daughter quietly grew. Emma never complained. She simply sat near windows, drew pictures in silence, and watched her mother rush through life. One rainy evening, Sophia arrived home later than usual. Her assistant had forced her to attend another business dinner, and by the time she stepped inside the house, the clock was close to 10. The mansion was quiet. As she walked through the hallway, she noticed a dim light glowing from the dining room. Emma was sitting alone at the table with crayons spread around her. She was drawing carefully on a sheet of paper while a cold plate of untouched dinner sat nearby. Sophia stopped walking. For a moment, guilt hit her harder than any business failure ever had. "Emma," she said softly. The little girl looked up. Her big brown eyes met her mother's, but she said nothing. Sophia slowly walked closer and noticed the drawing. It showed a small girl holding her mother's hand under a bright sun. Above them, Emma had written 3 shaky words. "I miss you." Sophia felt her chest tighten. She suddenly realized that while she had spent years building an empire, her daughter had been quietly growing lonely right beside her. That night, Sophia couldn't sleep. She sat alone in her bedroom staring at the drawing again and again. Every meeting, every award, every success suddenly felt meaningless compared to the sadness in her daughter's eyes. The next morning, instead of heading straight to work, Sophia did something unexpected. She canceled every meeting. Her staff was shocked. Investors were confused. But for the first time in years, Sophia didn't care. She walked into Emma's room and smiled gently. "How about we go out for dinner tonight?" she asked. Emma looked surprised. Sophia knelt beside her daughter and continued softly, "Just you and me. No phones. No work. I want to spend time with you." Emma stared at her mother for a few seconds before giving a tiny nod. That small nod meant more to Sophia than any business contract she had ever signed. All day, Sophia felt nervous. She realized she didn't even remember the last time they had gone somewhere together alone. She had spent so much time trying to provide a perfect life for Emma that she had forgotten the one thing her daughter truly needed, her presence. That evening, Sophia wore a simple black dress instead of her usual business suit. Emma wore a soft pink sweater and quietly held her mother's hand as they entered a beautiful restaurant downtown. The restaurant glowed with warm golden lights. Soft piano music played in the background while people talked and laughed around them. At first, dinner felt awkward. Sophia tried to start conversations. "How was your drawing class today?" Emma simply shrugged. "Do you still like chocolate pancakes?" A tiny nod. Sophia smiled sadly. She realized how many little things she no longer knew about her own daughter. When the food arrived, silence returned between them. But this time, it didn't feel cold. It felt gentle. Sophia noticed Emma carefully observing everything around her, the candles, the music, the happy families nearby. Then something unexpected happened. Emma picked up a pen from the table and began drawing on a paper napkin. Sophia watched quietly. A few minutes later, Emma slowly pushed the napkin toward her mother. It showed a picture of the two of them sitting together at dinner. Above the drawing was a small heart. And underneath it were 4 words. "I like this moment." Sophia's eyes instantly filled with tears. For years, she had been waiting to hear her daughter speak again. But in that moment, she realized Emma had been communicating all along, in drawings, gestures, and silent emotions that Sophia had been too busy to notice. Sophia covered her mouth as tears rolled down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I should have been here more." Emma looked at her mother carefully. Then, slowly, the little girl reached across the table and held Sophia's hand. It was such a small action. But to Sophia, it felt like the entire world stopping. The successful CEO who could confidently face boardrooms full of powerful people suddenly broke down crying in the middle of the restaurant. Nearby guests quietly looked over, touched by the emotional moment. Sophia squeezed her daughter's tiny hand and smiled through tears. "I promise," she said softly, "things are going to change." For the first time in years, Emma smiled back. A real smile. Not forced. Not weak. A genuine smile filled with warmth. That night after dinner, they walked slowly through the city streets together. The rain had stopped, and the lights from nearby buildings reflected beautifully on the wet roads. Sophia noticed Emma holding her hand tighter than before. And for the first time in a very long time, Sophia didn't think about work. She didn't think about meetings, investors, or success. She only thought about the little girl beside her. Over the next few weeks, Sophia continued changing her life. She left the office earlier, ate meals with Emma every night, and spent weekends painting, cooking, and watching movies together. Slowly, the house that once felt cold and empty began filling with warmth again. Then one evening, while they were baking cookies in the kitchen, Sophia accidentally dropped flour onto her face. Emma stared at her mother for a second. And suddenly, she laughed. A soft, tiny laugh. Sophia froze. Tears immediately filled her eyes again. "Emma," she whispered. The little girl looked nervous after making the sound, but Sophia gently knelt in front of her and smiled warmly. "It's okay," she said softly. "You don't have to force anything." Emma stared at her mother for a moment. Then quietly, almost like a whisper carried by the wind, she spoke her first word in 3 years. "Mom." Sophia burst into tears and hugged her daughter tightly. At that moment, she understood something deeply important. Success wasn't the awards on her office walls. It wasn't money, fame, or power. Real success was hearing her daughter's voice again. And all it had taken was love, patience, and one beautiful dinner together.